Hello students, today's agenda is to check homework. We'll be learning inequality scenarios and you will be able to do 3.4. Today students will be able to graph inequality scenarios, and this is going to be using the slope-intercept form, and sometimes we're going to be able to use it with the x and y intercept. So for this one, we would have to solve it first, leaving y by itself. Okay, before we start, let me give you some vocabulary in reference to inequalities. So less than is this symbol, menor que. Greater than is this symbol, mayor que. Less than or equal to, menor o igual que. Greater than or equal to, mayor o igual que. And these include the number that is on the right, okay? At most, a lo mucho, lo máximo. Tiene que ser menos que eso. At most, and a lot of people get confused with that one. It's actually less or equal to, okay? So at most, less or equal to. At least is the opposite, greater or equal to. In Spanish is lo mínimo es. At least, lo mínimo es no menos de por lo menos. Okay, so it means greater than that. The minimum, it means greater or equal than. The limit is less or equal, es el límite. So that means that you want less than that. That's your limit or less, okay? The maximum, so it's that or less. Okay, so this, if you want, you can separate the ones that are less on one side and the greater on the other side to make it easier for you to identify. But this is a list that includes most of them. Okay, so in here it says, imagine that there is a maximum of 25 people. Maximum means that that's the top or less in a room. Okay, imagine that there is a maximum of 25 people in a room. There can be men and there can be women. Graph this scenario. So the equation is going to be the men plus the women that are in the room. Since it's the maximum is 25, that means that it's that or less. So it's that, meaning equal to 25 or less. Okay, together the two of them is less or equal than 25 because that's the maximum. Now you could use, since it says that we're going to be graphing with the slope-intercept form, the slope, you have to have the variable that is in here, meaning the dependent variable by itself, isolated. So what you can do, you know what, we're going to graph it just with the x and y intercepts. I'm going to show you very small how to do it with the slope-intercept form, but right now we're just going to graph it since it's set up for the slope-intercept, the x and y intercept. All you have to do is create your graph like this. You can do, since it's 25, you can do by 5s, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, etc. And the same on the other side. And so what you're going to do is you're going to, at 25, you're going to put the dot. It's not a circle, okay? It's just a dot. And you're going to connect that. And Since you have an equal sign, so let me put in here on the side. If you have an equal sign underneath, this means solid line. It doesn't matter if it's greater or less than, but that equal, that little pencil means that the line is solid. If you only have less than or greater than, no equal sign, then the line is going to be dotted line. It's just like open circle, closed circle, but in here is dotted line for not equal to, or solid line if you have the equal. So in here you do have the equal. That means that you're going to connect, and I don't see my ruler in here, so I'm going to use a pen here. Hopefully it doesn't move too much, to guide myself. So you're going to connect this. Since you have the equal, the line is going to be solid. Okay? And M plus W is less. Okay? If the independent is less, that means that you're going to shade in there. Okay? When these are both positive, and let me put, these are going to represent the woman, these are going to represent the men. That means that woman is the dependent variable. When that variable is positive, you just follow what this says, okay, for Y. So since W is less than, you look at this. This is greater than my line. This is less than my line. So that's where my shade is going to go. Okay? Just following that section, that helped me guide myself. Okay, let's do another one. And hopefully if you were not sure about that shade, maybe this is going to help. It says you have a checking account and a savings account. Yeah, you have a minimum of $100 total. Graph this scenario. So together, my checking account plus my savings account, it's at least $100. Now a minimum of $100. So what symbol do I use in here? So minimum, it means that that's the minimum or more. So that means that you have equal or greater than, whoops, sorry. So greater or equal than 100. Okay, together the two accounts, I have more or equal to 100. Okay, minimum, at least that or more. Again, oh, and I was gonna show you how to graph using the other method. I'm sorry for going back and forth. So to do it with the other method, you're gonna have M plus W is less or equal than 25. You're going to leave this one, the Y, the one that is on Y by itself. So you're going to subtract M from both sides. Your W is less or equal than negative M plus 25. So this is when, now that the Y, or in this case W, is by itself, this is going to be your initial point. Okay, that's your y-intercept. And it's at 25, so that's your first point. Then in here, you have negative m. That means that it's negative 1 over 1. That means that for every one that you go down here, you go 1 to the right. So the rise is negative 1, the run is positive 1. So you go down 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay? The rise, negative 1, run, positive 1. -1, +1, -1, +1, etc. Or in this case, it's the same as if you go down 5, 5, because 5 over 5 is -1. -5 over 5 is -1. -5 divided by 5 becomes -1, which is the slope. Okay, so that's how you would use graphing this part. And I think this is more convenient to do it with the 0, 0, right? The 25, 25, because the numbers are so small and this is a little bigger. But whichever method you prefer, you can graph it with either one. Okay, so in here, it's going to be the same thing. So I'm just going to put 100. Since it's a bigger number, I'm going to choose the correct units by, I'm going to do by 10, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And you can be taking note at the same time as me so that you advance as well. If I go a little too fast, maybe you can just pause the video. 100. Then the same for here, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100. They're not the same spacing. It should, but they're not. So I'm going to put the dot at 100. What I'm doing here by putting the dot at 100, all I'm doing is finding the x and y intercepts. The x-intercept, y is 0. For the y-intercept, x is 0. I call it the viscous, or I crossed, because the pupils go to the middle. Okay, so if y is 0, meaning, let's see, let me put C as the X, CS, CS. When S is 0, then that means that that becomes nothing, and C becomes 100. Okay, this is from what you saw in module L. When C is 0, 0 plus S is S, and so S becomes 100. And so now that I found those points, I just put them at 100. I have the pencil right there, the equal sign. That means includes every point at that line. Okay, the solid line means it includes every single point on the line. Every single point on the line. And that if it doesn't have the equal sign, it's a broken line because it does not include those points on top of that line. Okay, greater than, together the two of them are greater than, and this is only because the S value is positive. Okay, I'm going to show you in a minute if it wasn't positive what you would do, or in the next lesson. So S is greater, we have to look. This is smaller numbers, these are bigger numbers, because in here you will have 110, 120, 130. Those values are bigger. So again, you're just basing yourself on this Y value. Since this is greater, that's where you're going to do the shading. Not on the lesser values, but on the greater values because of this sign. Okay, and so that will be the graph. What does this mean? It means that any point in here, for example, if I go maybe right here, this point is in the shade. I have $90 in the savings account. I have $40 in the checking account. Together, 90 plus 40 is 30. 90 plus 40 is $130. So my checking plus my saving is greater or equal than 100. Why? Because 130 is greater than 100. Now, if I choose, let's see, maybe this point right here, it means that I have 80 on the checking and I have 20 on the savings. Together, that's $100. So it is correct because, and that's why the line is solid, because it means that the checking plus the savings in here, in this point, is $100, and it is greater or equal. In that case, it's equal to 100. Okay, that's what this graph represents. That any point in here will say that it's true, because you will have either 100 or more money together in the two accounts. Okay, here's another one. Imagine that you have more than 12 pounds of food. More than, okay? You can feed a dog with 2 pounds of food or a cat with 1 pound of food. How many animals can you feed? Okay, all of these seem to be set up for the x and y intercepts. And again, if you want to do it the other way around, all you have to do is just cancel the x value. So for example, in here, c plus s is greater or equal than 100. You cancel the x value, meaning c minus c minus c. And so s is greater or equal than negative c plus 100. So this is the initial point, always the y-intercept, right there. Go down 1 for every 1, because this is negative 1 over 1. So you go down 1 for every 1. So it's the same as if you go down 10 for every 10. Go down for 10 for every 10, right? Because anything negative 10 over 10 is the same as negative 1 over 1. Negative 10 divided by 10 is negative 1, so that's it. So negative 1 over 1, or negative 10 for every positive 10, negative 10, positive 10, negative 10, positive 10, and that's your slope for where to follow the line. Okay? Okay, so in here, imagine that you have 12 pounds of food. And I think I'm running out of ink. Let me change this. You have 12 pounds of food. More than 12 pounds of food. You can feed a dog with 2 pounds of food or a cat with 1 pound of food. So together, it's going to be 2 pounds for every dog, plus 1 pound for every cat, and together what you have is going to be more than 12 pounds. More than 12 pounds. Notice how in here we don't have the equal sign. And so again, if you want to, let's say that you want to leave this by itself. So this one is a little bit more, it's a little easier to do with the other method. Why? Because this is a smaller number and it's easier to see, although the other ones are not too hard either. So what you would do, let me do the other method first in here. First of all, we don't need the 1. Remember the coefficient 1, we never write it down. So you can just put cat in here. It's greater than 12. We're going to subtract 2d from both sides. And so c is greater than negative 2d plus 12. So if you want to use this one instead to graph, this is what you would do. I'm going to do by 2 so that I don't have to do 12 of them. Okay, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. And you're going to be going down. On the rise is negative 2. On the run is positive 1. So in here, I'm going to do the same just so the spacing is similar. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. The initial point is the y-intercept, which is at 12. But then it says go down 2 and 1 to the right. Down 2 and 1 to the right. So right in the middle of this. Down 2 and 1 to the right. That's a 2 already. Down 2 and 1 to the right, meaning at 3. Down 2 and 1 to the right at 4. Down 2 and 1 to the right at 5. And then down 2 and 1 to the right. So that's how you would use the slope-intercept form. Okay, remember that this is the y-intercept and this is the slope, and this is in the form of y equals mx plus b, except that this is inequality. Okay, am I going to draw a solid or is it going to be a broken line? Well, since it doesn't have the equal sign, this line is going to be broken. Let me find one. So I'm just gonna kind of do it like this. See how it's not solid line? You don't have a little pencil in here, there is less ink in here. Okay, that's what it is. It means that the points on the line are not included. Okay, you do not include the points on the line. Okay, so now if this is greater, the ones for cats, this is for dogs, cats that are fed. If this is greater, that means these are lesser values than this, right? 14, 16, 18, 20, those are greater. And it says that we're going to base ourselves again on this value. If this is greater, you're going to choose the line on top. Ignore this part because some people get confused with, but these are greater too. Okay, or these are, no. Just look at these values based on this line. The values on top of the line, the values on the bottom of the line. This means greater, these are greater, these are on top. That's what you're going to shade. And so, since these are greater values, that's where my shade is going to be on top of the line. Okay? So that's where the shading goes. Oh, how beautiful. And this is broken line. Okay, very important. This is a broken line. The shade is greater than, so you go up here. Okay, now let's do with this method. What you would do is to find the x and y-intercept. For the x-intercept, y is 0. For the y-intercept, x is 0. Okay, so in this case, it would be d, z, d, c. And so, if c is 0, that's 0. 1 times 0 is 0, so it disappears. All you have to do is divide. 12 divided by 2 gives me the value of d. And 12 divided by 2 is 6, so the dogs that I can, if I feed 0 cats, with this I'm going to be able to feed 6 dogs, because each one takes 2 pounds. Now, if there are 0 dogs, then I divide 12 by 1 pound. How many cats can be fed? 12 cats. So again, because d is 0, 2 times 0 is 0, this disappears. All I have to do is divide by the coefficient. For the graph, I'm going to go by 2's again, so that you see the difference between one method and the other. And so I'm going to put dogs in here, cats in here. I'm going to go by 2's, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And so it says 6, 0, 6, 0, it's right there. 0, 12, 0, 12, it's right there. it's not a solid line. I mean, it's not an equal sign in here, so it's going to be a broken line. Notice how it's very similar to the other one, right? Very similar. You're just using a different method of graphing. And so again, we are only going to look at this value. If this is positive, that means I'm just going to look at that. C is greater, right? C is greater, or Y is greater. That means that I'm going to shade on that section. So if C is greater, these are the values that I'm going to be shading, and so the shade goes in here. So it's the same graph, whichever method you use. This is a little easier to see, so whichever you prefer, that's fine, unless it's specified in the assignment. Okay, use this method to graph it, then you use whatever method they tell you. Okay, well, let me do one last example. It says you have less than $30. Less than $30. You want to buy bread and milk. A gallon of milk costs $3. And a loaf of bread costs $2. So together you should spend less than $30, and it makes sense, right? You don't want to spend money that you don't have if you go to the store and that's all you have. Of course, there are credit cards and debit cards, but you only want to limit yourself to that. You have to spend less. Okay, so I'm just going to use the X. Yeah, I'm just going to use the X and Y intercepts in this case. So you have 0, 0. And I'm going to put G in here, B in here, G, B. It can be the other way around. Somebody asked me, teacher, what if I switch them, because I don't know. I said it's gonna be showing the same information. It's just gonna look a little different. Instead of, for that one that I was doing, the cats was like this, so it would be just like that. Okay, you're just switching, but it's the same information. But then you also change the letters in here. Okay, so if B is 0, 2 times 0 is 0. That means you don't buy any bread. How many pieces, how many gallons of milk would you be able to buy? 30 divided by 3 is 10. Now what if it's the other way around? I don't want any gallons of milk, so 30 divided by 2, I'm able to buy 15 loaves of bread. Okay, to graph it that way, I think I'm gonna go, this one is a little more complex. So in here, I think I'm gonna go by 3s. It's gonna be a little tricky. Let me do by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So I need up to 15 only. Okay, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Why? Because the value for either one, so G is for X, that's gonna be gallons of milk. B is for Y, so that's going to be your bread, your loaves of bread. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. 10, 12. Okay, so in here it says that there are 10 gallons and 0 loaves of bread. So 10 gallons and 0 loaves of bread. 0 gallons and 15 loaves of bread. So that's where I would put my line. It says less than, it does not include the equal sign. So I'm going to draw my line through here. It doesn't have the equal sign, so it means that it's going to be again a broken line. Okay. And not only that, but it says that remember that you're going to look only at this. If this was negative, then you have to switch the symbol, just like we did in previous lessons where dividing by a negative, this swaps. So in here, b, the coefficient is positive. That means if this is positive, you just keep it like that. So b is less, the lesser values are here, not on the 16, 18, 20, but on the 14, 12, 10, etc. So that means that my shade is going to be below the line, and so that's what I'm going to shade. Okay, and it does not include the points on the line. Okay, so with this, you're able to work on 3.4 and have fun.